I think at this moment, lots of us are in agreement that we need to vote to get rid of
We
Trump.
have a lot of work to do so people really understand the power of their voice and the power of their vote. They're one and the
Yeah, I
same.
do believe we definitely have power, like in the box and whatnot. But I feel like, especially in these past few years, and as it like a person who's in college, like I'm constantly towing the line between even believing in the electoral college as a system that's like right, because how can you win the popular vote? Like just simple questions like that are like enrage me.
And to me, voting is a very powerful form of protest because it's a way to hold people accountable who don't live up to their obligations.
So I've heard someone say that if you're protesting and you don't vote, sit down. And I disagree with that type of thinking. If it wasn't for the protesters, we wouldn't be here where we're at right
It's
now.
not a matter of if you protest and don't vote, sit down. It's more a matter of what is the follow through.
My belief in grassroots organizing and the fact that that's always been and that like may be the most effective right now.
My pronouns are they, them. I'm a first generation Afro Latinx living in this country.
I am first generation American. My parents were immigrants from Belize, from Central America.
I was born in Haiti. I came here when I was 14. I naturalized in my early 20s.
So I think that voting is important through the eyes of my parents and the work they did to become American citizens. So through those lens, I think voting is important.
Just going to be able to vote was like a big deal to me.
Once I turned 18 and I was able to vote, that was my freedom card. I had waited all my life to do that.
I don't know. I never felt like growing up that like the country technically had very much a positive view on my life or very much so wanted to help my life excel.
What Black people in general, Black people of all genders, have experienced in this country for a very long time. And when we consider that, we also think about how it's very hard to place trust in a system that has always worked against us, that is by design against us. So when we think about using the system, the same system that has, done everything to us and to harm us, we can't really. There's skepticism, a lot of skepticism involved.
It is like a war on every front for us, for people who look like us, for people who believe in Black liberation and the sanctity of Black life. I am steeped in democratic and political and progressive spaces, and we are fighting desperately to get heard.
I found it highly hysterical that Nancy Pelosi would come out and say, oh, well, can someone give us with some reforms that they're interested in? And I'm like, how about you start with just stop killing us? How about that? That we had to do something about the school to prison pipeline.
To me, it doesn't matter what issue you care about. At the ballot box, collectively, we have a lot of power to bring about reform.
When I was growing up, I grew up in the ghetto right behind the White House. Presidents would come to our schools, wave a hand, and then that was it. So to me, like I was left hopeless when it came to the voting process.
I think my concerns are around those people who can't vote.
The vote is very important. And the reason it's important is because they don't want you to do it. They're trying to kill it in any other kind of way. They wouldn't work so hard to suppress it if it weren't so important.
A lot of my students, they don't care about voting. They don't care about any of that stuff. And I see myself in them. I've been pushing myself to learn more about every aspect of voting so that way I can like teach them. But I feel as though we definitely need to like make it part of the curriculum. And start there.
I think we should really learn the system. It is stacked against us, and a lot of it is disheartening. Like, I can't believe that this guy is in office right now.
I was a poli-sci teacher. I'm radical. I'm a troublemaker. Did it for 27 years. Retired educator. And as far as I'm concerned, if you ain't voting, then you ain't complaining. The protest is the complaint, but you got to follow up with it. That's what I gotta say.
I've got very mixed feelings about living in America, and I have for a long time.
I'm a queer Black photographer whose work is steeped in my activism around racism, sexism, and homophobia.
I'm queer and I'm trans as well, so I feel like it's something that is like technically being battled, and I don't see anyone in representing me in any type of form of
There's
government.
just so many layers of this systemic racism that it seems that this process of electoral voting doesn't
The
work.
system doesn't really see us as whole people, as whole humans.
But the thing is, we're being gentrified and we're being taken over.
So I think that the power of
I'm
the
not
vote has
comfortable with
lost
it,
itself
so I'm
because
fighting.
then they turn around and they define the citizenship based on where we live and who we are.
For me, number one is voting. Every time I vote, when I come out of that voting place, I like raise my hand and I, sort of thank the ancestors for allowing us to be able to do this, because it wasn't, as we all know, it wasn't easy, right?
And so we, as much as, it is about go vote, it is about disrupting and dismantling every system that has built in this country on white supremacy that oppresses us, which includes our democratic process.
The realities that we face is that this is the system that's in place. What's the alternative for us in our communities if we don't vote? We need to disrupt the system. But my question is, can we disrupt the system from inside? Is it one or the other? Is it voting or disrupting the system? Or do we encourage people to vote as we're finding ways to dismantle or disrupt systemic racism?
So much of my work is like looking at history and looking at the foundational aspects of so many of the things that we generally just take for granted as things that just are things, and not the places that they come from and the structures upon which they rest.
I feel my citizenship has been defined for me.
This entire system was designed with who in mind? Certainly not us for the most part. Also, we're looking at the larger scheme of things in terms of thinking about the arc of history of this country. This is 2020. This was all started to be laid out in the latter part of the 18th century. So clearly, we need to really make some room for change. That doesn't mean that this is going to be the same system that was in place before we were considered full human beings, full citizens in this country, as far as the Constitution goes.
We don't need this level or this type of democracy where Democrats and Republicans kind of anchor or surround the thoughts and ideals of this country. It has left us in a shithole because look at what we have to deal with.
Money is the driver in DC. Money is what makes things happen. So congressional representatives, I don't care where they come from, they respond to the money that they are getting from whoever is giving the money.
So how do we actually break out of these systems that we have been sort of sequestered into the last several hundred years, beyond, just us being Black people, us being Black women as people in this country? What is the new thing? Because obviously what we have is not working. The fact that the streets are on fire across the country is obviously, speaking to that.
And so it's not enough to just go vote as is, but how can we reimagine and rebuild the democracy that includes us as full citizens and not only 3/4?
How do we do something else? What is the new thing? What are the new systems that we can build?
How are we exploring a beloved community and a visionary future where we are not just surviving, but we are thriving? Like where we are not on defense, but we are telling people what we want and then we get it.